Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Battleground. This is a podcast where Battle and friends talk all things wrestling and laugh with comedians that are way funnier than him. And you never know who's going to stop by. Here is your host, Battle.
All right, so we're back for another episode. Eli's in the building. We have a special guest. Jesse is on the show. Let me take that back. Righteous Jesse is on the show with us today. How you doing, man?
Man, I am still riding the high from Mania Week. Yeah, I feel fantastic right now.
And it's kind of crazy. I mean, you were up there in Mania. Me and Eli kind of broke down the show last week of everything that happened. Let's get your take. You were up there. How crazy was it?
Man, so I was up there specifically for IndependentWrestling.tv's family reunion show to do the Southern Underground Pro match. That's the only quote-unquote booking I had. But just walking around Jersey City, I didn't even go into New York. I didn't go to WrestleCon or any of that. I was strictly at the Collective where GCW, Game Changer Wrestling, essentially hosted all these different shows. And every block was just full of Airbnbs, full of wrestling fans. So I can't even imagine what wrestling or WrestleCon was like, where it's like the epicenter of the whole weekend, basically.
Right.
I can't even imagine. And plus all like the Ring of Honor shows at Madison Square Garden, New Japan, all that. I can't even imagine what the rest of it was like. But in the little bubble I was in, it was chaos.
I bet it's ridiculous. The one thing I always like at wrestling events is there's no shortage of people walking around with championship belts. And yeah. It's like I want to walk up to the guy and be like, okay, your belt, let's put it on the line right now. You got to defend it, right?
I don't remember who I saw tweet that, but I think it was somebody in WWE or somebody that was about to be signed by AEW, and they said that if they see a wrestling fan with a title, they have to defend it.
You have to.
Times.
I know. Me and Eli go back and forth in text messages because we're like in a few of those wrestling belt groups, and it's just kind of crazy to own one, but then to see people walking around events with them is
crazy.
Yeah,
I've gone to events with some, but like the last time I went, I basically gave one to all my friends, so they're all sitting there with belts, and then I'm just sitting there without. So if that had happened, they would have had to have defended them. So,
oh man,
yeah.
So let's kind of go into a little backstory about how everything happened. So I met Eli through Jesse, and then I met Jesse through the radio station that is no longer around. Rest in peace, Alt. So it kind of all comes full circle on everything. So let's just kind of dive in. Let's go with your first. What got you into wrestling?
Man, I just remember my first memory of wrestling is actually seeing Sting on TV. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know the match, but I remember seeing Sting. And wrestling was kind of always just on when I was a kid. I grew up a WWF kid. But I also, as I got older, I would switch back and forth between WWF and WCW. And then I found ECW. That was like the first game changer.
Right.
It was that was where I saw hardcore wrestling first. That's where I was like, that's kind of what I want to do. But yeah, man, I saw Sting, which is funny because Sting isn't even one of my favorite wrestlers. I respect what he's done.
You take that back.
I mean, I've got nothing against Sting, but I was just like, okay. I just remember seeing his face, and here we are. I've been in and out of independent wrestling for 15 years now this year.
Man, it's crazy. What about you, Eli?
Yeah, me and Jesse, we talked about this one day when we were VHS hunting.
Oh, yes.
But, yeah, I'm from West Tennessee, so, of course, Memphis wrestling is like a magical kingdom, you know?
It's the goat of wrestling.
Yeah. Actually, a cousin of mine through various marriages, I think he's my second cousin or my third cousin. But
figuring it out.
Yeah. And his name's Danny Davis. He actually was a wrestler in Memphis. So it was weird because it was like my great-grandmother, like if you went to her house, she had this huge picture of him in his gear. He painted a star over his eye, kind of like Sting. Like front and center, like, you know, you walk in and like she thought it was real. She was one of those people that would sit like ringside and like try to hit the villains and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And he was in a tag team called the Nightmares, and his partner turned on him yeah, I just remember being about 5 or 6, and she was like, "I just can't believe he did that to Danny. They were so good." Like, she, you know, was one.
She
of those
got into it.
Yeah, but you know, just growing up seeing Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee, and I even went back on the network and found Steve Austin fought Danny Davis about 1990. So it started there, and then, like Jesse said, it was just always on, and you know, you watch WCW on Saturday mornings, and then Turner Time 6:05 Saturday nights, and then, you know, when things really picked up between WCW, WWF, just flipping back and forth. So
funny story about Danny Davis. Nightmare Danny Davis actually trained a buddy of mine that I made through my, I guess now defunct wrestling podcast, Kyle Matthews.
Yeah,
out of Georgia.
Was that at Ohio? OVH?
I don't actually know where Danny trained Kyle, but Kyle wore a mask before he retired, and it was to honor Danny Davis. Nice. And that's just like a little weird full circle thing that I just thought
Once
about.
again, making everything full circle on this podcast.
Making movies.
I got to say, the first time I ever went, and we were kind of talking about this the other day, I don't remember how old I was, but it was at whatever, Gaylord, Bridgestone, SoMe, whatever you want to call it. It was Monday Night Raw, and it was the night that Chyna debuted.
Oh, wow.
Flung Terry around like a rag doll. I remember the main event because I was getting so pissed off. It was Bret Hart versus Sid Vicious, and every time that the match was about to happen, Steve Austin would jump one of the two in the back, and then eventually it finally came down to the main event of Sid and Bret. But I just remember that moment of, like, who the hell is this whatever this is, jumping the ring and just throwing this woman around, and ever since then it's been hooked.
That was so violent that I still remember it to this day.
It's crazy because it's like you sit there back then, you know, you see that now and it's like, holy shit, like that's a big woman, and she's like 5 foot nothing. And another full circle thing was Wizard World, or no, it wasn't. Yeah, it was Wizard World a couple years back, and Terry Runnels was there, and we started talking about that, and she was like, well, that really wasn't the night that Chyna was supposed to debut. They had to rush her in because they wanted to do it at a pay-per-view, but she said something happened with Chyna, and they're like, okay, we got to sign this contract now. We got to get you out here, and then the rest was history.
Maybe a bidding war for Chyna?
I'm guessing. And then it evolves, and then I've switched back and forth with WWE and, you know, WCW, WWF, whatever. And I kind of started gravitating towards WCW more because it seemed like they had all the good stuff. But then once that Attitude Era hit, I was off. Like, there was no more flipping back and forth.
I mean, until the late 90s, I was WCW the whole way because, you know, being in the South, you didn't WWF wasn't readily available. Like, you had Raw.
Right.
But, you know, WCW, they had, like, Saturday morning shows, Saturday evening shows, Sunday evening shows. They would do Clash of the Champions just on a Tuesday night. I mean, they just had a lot more content that you could access. And through till probably about 97, 98 when all the Attitude stuff started changing. That's when I started flipping back and forth. But I liked both of them. I mean, I had WWF toys growing up, and, you know, just whatever wrestling I was down with. Played the WWF games, you know, video games and stuff. So.
All right, so there we go. So let's talk Jesse some more. So let's go to your wrestling career. Let's talk about this. How did it start? And there is one match in particular that I want to talk about. It happened at the Cobra.
Okay,
I want to talk about that, but we'll discuss that later in the show. So let's just dive into it. Let's go to the very beginning.
So, like, probably 90% of wrestling fans in the late 90s, early 2000s dabbled in backyard wrestling with my best friend Brett Eisen, and we probably met about 7th grade and have just been glued to each other since. We started backyard wrestling together, and then through some weird, like, zoning issue, he got moved to a different middle school for his last year before high school. He met some other kids that, you know, messed around with backyard wrestling and liked wrestling. Once we got to high school our freshman year, we all kind of just, like, made this really weird hodgepodge of friends and started backyard wrestling together. Turns out that a girl that we knew, I think her cousin or uncle was a local wrestler around Smyrna, Tennessee. we would pass out flyers for our backyard wrestling shows, even though they were god awful. We thought they were great. We loved them. So I guess through us passing out flyers, he got wind of what we were doing. So him and his tag team partner came, watched us, pretty much pulled us aside, and were like, you guys are going to get hurt, so let us train you. So they train us, and throughout the training process, which was basically we had a ring that was a converted boxing ring. And I don't know if you've ever been in a boxing ring.
Oh, yeah.
They suck.
Oh, there's no giving those bad boys.
So every time we trained, we had to, and this was also like the dead of summer. Every time we trained, we went over to his house. We set up the ring in the front yard in the dead of summer. And after training, we had to take it down because we never knew what the weather was going to do.
Right.
So every time it was set up, train, tear down, just in the most pain of your life. So I think I had my first match maybe 2 or 3 months after training, and I totally screwed up the whole thing. It was the worst first match you could possibly ever had. So after that, we kept wrestling for them, HWA, Havoc Wrestling Alliance in Smyrna, Tennessee at the Armory. They took us to a few other shows. We wrestled outside of a bar in Dixon. I think the second time we were there, the promoter ran off with the money. And this is where you get the full outlaw indie wrestling experience. Promoter runs off with the money. Me, my mom, one of my trainers, Kilo, and my buddy Travis were all standing by the car. Kilo says, Maria, get in the car. And everybody just got in the car. We follow the guy that took the money, and we literally just go through all these back roads in Dixon. We pull up to this house. Dude jumps out of the car, runs in the house. As he's running out of the house, another guy is coming out of the house with a shotgun, points the shotgun at the car, and Kilo turns around at us and looks at us and says, sorry, boys, $5 ain't worth it. So then we haul ass out of there, and I was just like, this is what I'm getting into. Like, we were only getting paid $5 a piece, but to us, that was everything.
Right.
So then from there, like, I was pretty in and out. I went back to wrestle for HWA a couple times. I tagged with Brett as the Tie-Dye Express, which was a lot of fun. After that, I did a benefit show for my friend Travis, who passed away. I did that in Tullahoma at the Gypsy Joe Arena. And then shortly after that, a few years after that, we started Southern Underground Pro. I was supposed to wrestle on the first show, but the guy who we rented the ring from, he didn't want any hardcore stuff happening in his ring, and that's fair.
Right.
Because we did some really dumb stuff. But then the second show is the match that you wanted to talk about.
So now let's talk about this, because I remember, I think that's when that match started happening. I think that's when me and Eli started kind of connecting the dots with everything.
Okay.
Walk us through the death match.
All right.
I mean, I've seen photos. There's a watermelon. There's Legos. Just walk me through this.
Dude, I was willing to go all out because I never knew if I was going to get the chance to do it again. So we grew up watching Combat Zone Wrestling. That's where I found Sick Nick Mondo. I watched XPW, which is where I found the Messiah, Homeless Jimmy, all these deathmatch wrestlers. And I was just like, holy shit. Like, wrestling is cool, but if you add all this other stuff, there's so much more you can do.
Right.
And I've never really been the best professional wrestler. Like, technically, I can sell like crazy. I can make you believe. But there's something about that added element of violence that just, I don't know, it gets my brain working. So I met Tank, the guy that I wrestled. I think I officially met him at Scenic City Invitational a few years ago in Chattanooga. And we recorded a podcast with him, and afterwards he just sat in our hotel room for a couple hours and just talked to us about everything. And I told him, I was like, before I can officially say that I'm never going to wrestle again, I have to do a death match. And he said, well, I'm your guy. I didn't know if he was serious or not. I think I thought about that every single day for about 9 months, just wondering if it would happen, what I would do, what he would want to do. So that match was initially booked for the first Southern Underground Pro show. It was going to be a special attraction, but the guy that we were renting the ring from, he didn't want us to do it in his ring, which is totally fair because we probably would have messed something up. And I also have to say that Tank is like a dad to me. We've gotten really close over the last few years, so if there's anybody that I was going to do this with, it was going to be him because I trust him immensely. So I'm like, him and I are texting leading up to the match, and I was like, what do you want to do? Like, I have all these ideas. And I actually saw him at another deathmatch tournament, like towards the Alabama border. And I'm sitting there talking to him, and I was like, I have a really crazy idea for the open of the match. If you're down for it, I really want to do it. And he was like, all right, what's your idea? I said, I'll come out first, get everybody riled up, you'll come out. And the whole time, I'm going to have these skewers in my back pocket. And while you're doing your entrance deal, I'll just kind of be showing them off to the crowd. I want you to turn me around, boot to the gut, and put the skewers in my head right out of the gate. That way people know that we're not messing around.
God, this is making me cringe right now just hearing this story.
Honestly, the final tap of the skewers going into my head wasn't really that bad.
As he says, it's not that bad.
It was the initial jabs when they weren't going in. That really sucked. So he was like, hell yeah, let's do that. He's like, that's a really hot start. And I was like, all right, we're in. That's about the only thing we had planned for that match. The opening spot and then the finish. The choke slam on the light tubes, which really cut me up.
Oh, yeah, I saw the photos and I was like, this is fucking ridiculous.
Man.
And it's...
So, I don't know, man. When we were backyard wrestling after we got trained, I just gravitated towards jumping off of the highest shit I could find, or I did a light tube death match in the backyard with a guy where I got cracked with 30 light bulbs, and we had salt in the ring and all this crazy stuff. So I was like, I have to do this in a professional environment. Have to do it.
Right.
Tank made that come true. I just remember, I don't remember what he did to me, but I remember kind of feeding around to him, and I see him grab the watermelon, and I was like, fuck, he's going to drill me in the head with that thing. And he just sets it down, and I just kind of crawl over to him, and he just pile drives me on it. It was the best smelling thing that I've ever smelled in my life.
You would never expect you to say that just then. It's the best smelling thing.
I smell the watermelon, and I was just like, all right, he didn't crack it over my head. We're good. It's kind of all a blur. I just remember doing it, getting really emotional. He gave me the barbed wire 2x4 that he used on me. He gave me that. It's still at the house. And then I just remember tearing down the ring and bleeding through my shirt while I was doing it because everybody left. And I was just like, damn, all right, well, guess we got to get this ring down. But yeah, man, it was just a bucket list thing, and I'm glad that I got to do it with Tank of all people because he's literally a Southern wrestling legend. He was one of the first guys to really go up north to Ring of Honor. He was in NWA Wildside for years. He's just done just about everything you can do on the indies. IWA Mid-South, he was... And there was also an added layer to it because the first match of the night was Brett versus Tank. So I got to see my best friend wrestle my wrestling dad. And then I got to wrestle Tank. So there's just a lot emotions. Of layers to it all. It's weird.
Yeah, man, that's crazy stuff. So, I mean...
I actually bought a... this is going to sound really fucking crazy. But I actually bought a handsaw that I wanted to use, and we never got to it.
An electric head or just a handsaw?
Just a handsaw.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I'm not ballsy enough to do the carvers and stuff. I've seen Dean Ambrose when he was in CZW, they used an electric carver, and I was like, I'm good on that.
Right. And you talk about these stories, and there's an interesting thing. So my mom works with Gypsy Joe's daughter.
That's crazy.
And the stories that she would tell me, because I didn't put two and two together. Mm-hmm. And then she was like, yeah, my dad's Gypsy Joe. And I was like, why am I just now finding this out?
Dude.
And she was talking about the one match that stands out is the one with him and New Jack.
God, I watched that on TV.
And she was telling me about that. Mm-hmm. And she was like, at the end of the match, they legitimately wanted to kill each other.
Yeah, New Jack tried to kill him.
And she was saying that was the scariest thing to watch back, and you just hear that bat just dinging off of his head. And
he picked up that row of chairs and just slammed it on his head legs first. I was I remember watching that. The promotion actually put it out on their Saturday morning TV show, and I was just even at that age, I think I was 13, I was I feel like this shouldn't be on TV.
Right.
But I love New Jack and Gypsy Joe. Our trainers used to threaten us with Gypsy Joe because they were close with him. They'd be like, yeah, if you guys fuck up enough, we're just going to call Joe in. Or if you guys fail any classes, we're just going to call Gypsy Joe in and have him chop you to death. And we were just oh.
Yeah, and you don't want to take a chop from him.
Toughest dude.
Oh, man. So let's focus on what happened this past weekend. We kind of ran down the show, and we pretty good on what we called, right?
Yeah. There's a few little Surprises.
Some few little surprises. I think the one big thing takeaway is not WrestleMania, but it's who showed up at the G1 show at the end of the match. Oh. And here comes Enzo and Big Cass.
Okay.
You had to take a pause for a second, so I know this is going to go somewhere.
I mean, so everyone basically, they can't tell if it's real or not. I mean, if you look at it, security was not in a hurry to get that broken up.
No.
Like, they sat there and it just went on. And then when the stuff started circulating, like, Ring of Honor was, like, retweeting the tweets.
Right.
So I don't know. I think it was work. I think they planned it.
Well, when I looked at it, and there's one Instagram account that I follow, and it's a pretty funny thing. It's the Botch Club on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Like, it's funny to watch that stuff, but it showed all these fan angles of everything that happened, and you could see them throwing the punches, and it's the wrestling punches. And like you said, it took them forever to figure this out. Ring of Honor did make a nod about it during the commentary, but it wasn't anything spectacular. But I think it's one of those things that it's a work. They're trying to draw heat to them because, I mean, AEW is snatching up everybody left and right.
Yeah. We were actually in the car on the way back from Jersey City, and I don't remember if I was driving or if I finally stopped driving. Oh, I was driving because I drove most of that. So I'm just seeing little clips on Brett's phone as he's finding them. And I think it's Bully Ray. There's one shot where it looks like it just connected to, I think, Enzo's face. And I was like, we're a few days removed now. I think we all kind of are on the same page where we think it's a work. But at the time I was like, that might have been a legit shot. And that's somebody that I wouldn't want to get punched in the face by.
No.
I mean, I think they brought up the point. So, when it was happening live, they didn't air it. The cameras panned off. But, I mean, if you go back and look at what Enzo did at Survivor Series, I mean, he was tackled in 9 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean,
he didn't even get very far.
Right.
I got to say, I'm not the biggest fan of Enzo and Cass, but I think bringing them in is a very weird move. But I think it's smart to do it the way they did it because, like Eli said, he did the whole Survivor Series thing. So at that point, you don't really know what it is right out of the gate. You don't know if it's a work or a shoot. I mean, it's publicity either way, and that's what they're going for.
And with them, with the the track record they've had, I mean, Ring of Honor could get them for
probably next to nothing.
$100 a night.
I mean,
or something.
it's you sit there and you saw after Cass got let go, and you saw photos of him, and you're just kind of he was out of shape, and he was wrestling some indie stuff, and I think it's Ring of Honor trying to still stay relevant, get their name out there. Because I mean, if you look every day, I'm scrolling through, and AEW has signed somebody new, and the fact that prime example that they are on WWE's radar. I mean, Triple H made it known in his speech of buying the company so Vince can fire Billy again.
I can say that AEW signing isn't going to stop anytime soon.
No,
there's a handful of guys that were up in Jersey City this week that I feel will pop up very soon for them specifically.
Yeah, I think Double or Nothing's going to be a big. I don't think it's going to. I don't know if it's going to be as big as All In, just because All In was the first,
right.
And, but I think it's more of establishing what AEW is going to be, and I think we'll finally see. I don't know if they'll announce the TV deal, but they just signed JR. I mean, it's freaking huge, and I think they'll put in a few more big pieces. And I mean, there's still. I mean, somebody posted, maybe I don't know, maybe even you, but. We don't even know who Cody's fighting next month in Vegas, so there's still a lot of question marks. So I'm hoping I'm not regretting this trip out there. So.
We'll find out next month. But so you have that, and then I think we talked about with them signing Jim Ross. That was a big ordeal to get that guy.
Yeah.
Now it's who do you pair him up with? And I think we talked about there's rumors of Tony Schiavone coming back and voicing it. Could they bring Mike Tenay? Would that be an interesting?
Is Schiavone under contract with MLW?
I don't.
Or is somebody else doing commentary for? Oh, Jim Cornette's with MLW now doing commentary.
I don't know how ironclad that is. I'm sure
It'd be like an Impact deal.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You could just go wherever you want.
As long as available these dates.
As long as you're here to tape 3 shows in 1 hour.
Yeah,
so
give me a week and a month. We'll tape 40 shows, and you can go do whatever you want to do.
And there's also the option of post-production commentary, which,
which is what JR did with New Japan.
Right. So,
all right. So let's kind of focus on what pretty much stole the show was NXT Takeover, in my opinion. I mean, I think in a situation like this, you should have NXT Takeover in the Hall of Fame on Sunday nights and Mania on Saturday night. Because you lead into TakeOver and they blow the roof off every time.
Right.
So then it's like, how are you going to follow up? Let's bring out the Doctor of Thugonomics to WrestleMania.
I love that.
But that was the greatest thing of the night.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing you mentioned was, it's just too long at this point. I mean, having gone to the show last year and then sitting through it this year, it's just too much. I mean, asking someone to invest 7 and 8 hours at a time is just
right.
Work day.
Yeah,
and they're expecting you to get there super early for the pre-shows. It's like UFC. You get there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're there all day.
Yeah. So I think. Yeah,
such an awesome time having Dan Cummins hanging out. Don't forget,
but I don't know. I mean, they're playing around with it.
Time Suck, wherever you get your podcast, and podcast time. Let me just shamelessly plug my own that you're listening to. You can download this podcast.
I don't know. I mean, I remember when the pay-per-views were on Saturdays.
Free iHeartRadio app. I am on social media. If you want to follow me, it is Battle on Air.
It's one of the Royal Rumble.
By the way, next week a new episode is going to drop.
It's the one that's like hand drawn.
There's going to be some new stuff happening on the podcast. I cannot wait to tell you what that is. So make sure you stay tuned, up to date of everything that is Battleground, Instagram, Twitter, where we're at, Battle on Air. Until next time, like I always say, 2 fingers and elbow, boom.
Speaking of the Hall of Fame, the Bret Hart incident, that was so stupid.
And that's what was scary is like, somebody had posted a meme how it all made sense of like Bret Hart on The Simpsons,
right?
And Homer wearing that same hat and the guy tackling him. And apparently this guy's like batshit crazy and he's like an amateur MMA fighter. And they went through and he'd been tweeting Triple H and like he had been saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And then he finally shows up and does that. And then you get the KO punch from Dash. But
shout out to Dash.
The craziest thing, like if you go back and look on YouTube, the best person to handle that stuff was Macho Man. If you go back and look, there's videos, people jump, and from about 96 to 98, WCW crowds were wild.
Yep.
I mean, they were like New Japan crowds on crack. I mean, throwing garbage and hopping the fence and tackling security. I mean, they didn't give a shit. But as soon as someone hit the ring with Macho Man, that's it. Done. He is throwing hands.
Right.
And even what was that ref's name? Pee Wee Reese? Pee Wee, not Pee Wee Herman. Pee Wee Reese, I think is who it was. I mean, he got a guy and just choked him. Just laid on him and choked him out.
And Nash was pretty good at it, too. Nash would just stomp him in the face real quick and get him out.
And you see those, like, the WCW days of, like, the throwing trash and people jump in and Nash or Hall would just deck some dude.
I think he was in a Sting mask, but he climbed a cage and came down. So he's in the cage with him.
Wow. And
then you see Hogan and Macho Man get out and come after him, and it's just like, nice knowing you.
I think it's like fair game. Once you jump in that ring, and all bets are off. You get hit.
That's the thing is like you don't know. I used to work with a girl and her dad, and this was in the 80s. I guess WWF was here in Nashville, and he jumped the barrier and went in the ring and tackled Macho Man because I guess when the Mega Powers exploded. But it's like, but that dude with Bret Hart, I mean, he probably could have hurt him, So you never know, and it's the same thing with concerts, Like when the people get on the stage, I saw a video of Nirvana from like '90, and I mean, like Kurt Cobain's like does this with his guitar on a guy's head because I mean he doesn't know what they're gonna do, so
self-defense,
yeah. So.
And I mean Bret with his age, and that guy could have had a gun. I mean, it's scary to think stuff like that, but so overall, what was your thoughts on TakeOver?
I mean, excellent as always. There were not a ton of surprises, I guess. But I guess I'd say Gargano and Cole was probably the best match. I enjoyed the 4-way women's match. The tag Was that a 3-way tag match or 4? It was the War Raiders and...
I think it was just War Raiders and Aleister Black and Ricochet.
Yeah, it was that one. And then Dream and Riddle was solid. So...
Like, that is the greatest gimmick right now.
He's one of the best dudes in the world.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm ready to see him be called up already.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be interesting to have him and maybe, you know, when Brock does his farewell, if they do that, work that angle.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that would be an incredible way to elevate somebody. You know what I mean? I mean, that is definitely a David versus Goliath. I mean, I don't remember if it was in St. Louis, Chattanooga, or Cleveland, but I was near Matt Riddle, and he was always super friendly to us because we saw him several different places, and he was just one of those guys that remembered you, just super nice. And somebody asked him, like, when are you going to go to WWE? And he's like, I don't know, man, whenever I get the call. And they were like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to retire Brock. So if he actually gets to do it, it's like the most perfect call your shot scenario of all time.
Right. And the way they're booking him is really good. I mean, him and Dream, that was like the perfect storyline for those two. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see the character of Dream the way it is. Like, when you first saw him in Tough Enough, he was like the biggest douche you could ever meet.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, flip him and come against Dream. And, you know, I always said, and I sent a tweet out about it, that I would have liked to seen a story of Dream and Goldust together.
Yeah.
And of course, I kind of geeked out because, you know, Dusty Rhodes liked it. But I mean, just think about that storyline of those two. You know,
that'd have been great.
I think it's incredible that Dream kind of dresses like Hogan because Hogan said he'd never make it, or never going to make it in WWE, and it's just kind of.
Yep.
He's doing this at all times.
He's doing the Hulk up and the leg drop. Yeah. And
I mean, that's a big FU. I like that.
Now they both work for the same company.
Right.
Insane.
Mm-hmm. So what were your thoughts on TakeOver?
I actually didn't get to watch TakeOver. I was either at or on the way to Joey Janela's Spring Break 3 or 2 Part 1. 3 Part 1. Yeah, because I did 2 nights this year. So I actually haven't seen TakeOver yet. I've seen some of the results and everything, and like GIFs and pictures and stuff. But I'm super happy for Gargano.
Yeah,
he's a good dude.
I could see. I see Daniel Bryan and him, the little guy. Mm-hmm. They're gonna push him, and he's gonna, main event. He's gonna be the workhorse. when he gets called up. As long as they don't screw him like Tyler Breeze, I mean, we'll be fine. But
I have a giant tattoo for that dude.
So let's kind of move on to the big night, WrestleMania. I'm sure everybody's seen it already, right? So thoughts, overall rating. I give it, a C+.
I was hovering between C+ and B-. I went ahead and gave it a B- just because, I mean, when they did the whole, the McMahons came out and, you're the boss now, or this company, we're giving you what you want, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they pretty much did. I mean, short of... I think for people that have watched a long time, I think a lot of people knew Kurt Angle wasn't going to win.
Right.
But I think for a lot of people that are just kind of casual viewers, that pissed a lot of people off.
There was a little hope.
Yeah. And then I think the Iconics, I'm behind that. I've liked them since NXT. So, but I think like when we talked about it, I don't think we had them in our radar. And the women's Battle Royal was kind of a throwaway, but we didn't have Carmella pegged for that either.
I don't think anybody had Carmella pegged to win that one.
When everybody thought Sarah Logan won, that was the coolest moment.
And that's what I thought, because I kind of zoned in and out, and I was like, okay, maybe this is the time that they're pushing Sarah Logan. Her husband, got the tag titles in NXT. This is her time.
She's
and then
a beast.
All of a sudden, here comes Carmella, and I'm like, this is like some James Ellsworth stuff right now. Like,
perfect move for Carmella, but
yeah,
it was still cool for Sarah Logan to get that moment on that stage, even though she didn't get the win.
Right.
Still really cool to know that crowd was behind you.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, we called the Andre Royal. You know, I knew it was going to end with those two somehow, and Braun, and you know, I think that's kind of a throwaway thing. Like we said, it's great that they're remembering Andre, but it's like you don't get anything from this,
right?
Yeah, the big thing I ask people is like, do you know who won it last year? Like, do you know who won it 2 years ago? Like, it's just...
Didn't Big Show win it 2 years ago?
I think Big Show was the first one to win it.
Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, I know last year it was Matt Hardy, and then the year before I think it was Baron Corbin.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so...
And Mojo won it one year with the help of Gronk.
Yeah,
yep.
And then I think Big Show. So... But yeah, it's just... I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with Braun Strowman. Like, I don't know. I mean, last year he won the tag titles with a 10-year-old. This year he's in... Was that on the pre-show?
Yeah, that was pre-show.
I mean, he's on the pre-show and he wins a throwaway battle royal. I mean, I don't know. I'd heard that backstage that he was showing up late to events, or like he was leaving events early or something, so he had the heat backstage. But I mean, still, he's like one of your biggest dudes, you know?
Right.
So,
March mover.
Yeah, so...
Well, I mean, you look at last night, we're sitting there, and I'm watching it, and, Angle does his thing, and I was like, okay. And then they bring Lars out for the Angle spot. Mm-hmm. I was like...
Where do you go from here?
Like, what is this to do? Like, is he going to feud with Angle? Is he going to feud with Baron? Like, I was really thinking, you drop Lars in that main event, and then that way he goes after both of them, and then one of the two is going to face Lars for that title. Mm-hmm. Not put the bar out and make it a tag team match.
Yeah, that was... We watched it last night. Actually, my girlfriend resubscribed to Sling so we could watch the Raw After Mania. And I love the bar. I love Cesaro. I've been a huge Cesaro fan for years. He's one of the only wrestlers that can make me care about other wrestlers, so I've liked all of his tag teams. But it just felt really weird.
They bring him out. Here's a storyline.
The SmackDown tag team comes out on Raw. I mean, the shakeup's next week, but
right.
I don't know.
It's the Raw After Mania is always the fun one to watch because you sit there and watch it last night and I was like, okay, they gave Ryder and Hawkins their moment. They're about to drop the titles again, but they let them keep it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, what do you do with this angle now?
Right.
And there's really not very many tag teams in Raw or SmackDown that's good to make whatever. But we talked last week, I think. You look at the Usos, and there's really not very many people to go against. But the one thing that would be really good is if you put them against Sanity and have that whole psycho penitentiary whatever.
Man.
But then you have the gobbledygook come out of a box last night, too.
Yeah, that was something.
I think that's Bray Wyatt.
That was the general consensus at the house last night, too, was most likely Bray Wyatt. And I literally was like, the Gooker?
You sit there and watch it, and it pops up, and you're like, what is this? And I know that Bray has been doing house shows here and there, but it's, right now they're talking about legitimately making a Sister Abigail character. And WWE went in and bought all the rights because there was I'm drawing a blank on her name, but there was a girl in the Indies who she went out to try to trademark all that Sister Abigail stuff. And they came in and was like, no. We own everything.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I think at this point that ship's kind of sailed, I mean, they gave him the belt, was that 2 years ago, I guess? And he had it for 3 months and then dropped it. And then he had that weird match for Randy Orton with they projected the maggots on this, it's just so dumb. And I don't know. I mean, I think they still believe in him, but I don't know. I think if they were going to do an actual Sister Abigail thing, I mean, I think they probably should have done it already. So
right, or maybe Nikki Cross is that Sister Abigail.
Yeah,
I love Nikki Cross. She's so terrifying.
Just watching her, and you could tell that they're high on her, but they just don't know what they're going to do with her yet.
Right.
And it's last night sitting there watching, and it's for weeks Lacey Evans has walked to the ring and walked back, and I was like, God, please don't let this be another Eva Marie. But, for her to walk out and the first thing last night is she just cold cocks Becky Lynch. And I'm like, that's calling your shot right there. So, I mean, they're clearly high on her.
Yeah, I mean, it would be strange if they just automatically put her in a world title fight, but I don't know. I saw her when the NXT was here, whenever it was, and I thought she was awesome. So I think that's a big bite on your first big feud, but we'll
see what happens.
WWE does weird things.
Sink or swim at that point.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of there's a rumor that Ronda broke her hand, and then I heard AJ got hurt.
He's got some kind of hip injury, is what I read earlier. And then the squash match of Mysterio and Samoa Joe. I would have if they knew Mysterio was hurt and it was going to be a squash match, I'd have just moved that to the pre-show and then moved something else.
Yeah, the card placement was very strange. I loved that they opened with Seth and Brock.
I mean, that was
nobody expected it.
No, and I was sitting there thinking, I was like, why is this happening now?
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, man. I love that, but kind of as the night went on, I was just like noticing card placement, and I was like, this is. I feel like if I were in charge, I would have put this here. Like, I guess I just didn't want to like completely load the back half of the card,
right? Which
I get, but also like. Those people are there for so long, and it's such a roller coaster of a card, really.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I loved Mania, though.
And it was, and I love it. It's everything was good, but it's just like some of the stuff, like the theatrics was just kind of like, eh. Like Batista's coming out in that. I like Triple H's Mad Max thing. I was very unimpressed with Finn's entrance. Like, I was hoping that they would do more with the demon, not just put him up on a pedestal and put smoke.
Yeah.
Like have
just
like
the Babadook.
Yeah, just have him have like people dressed as demons trying to grab him at the bottom or something.
Right.
Or even, put it on the ramp, but it was just kind of drop down, there's it. Hit the coup de grace and go home.
God, what if you would have hit the coup de grace off that platform?
Man? Yeah. Ooh. I will say this, Bobby Lashley had on these green contacts.
That was pretty cool.
He looked incredible. Like, that one change, I was like, fuck. Like, I don't know.
At first I thought maybe something was wrong with my TV because I kept seeing those eyes. I was like, no, he's got contacts in, but what's happening? And then I did like the Miz and Shane McMahon's match. Of course, you had to have the big pop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I told you, I was like, here comes Shane's mandatory big spot, and then they climb up. And I don't know. I'm over Shane. I've never been like a huge fan. I mean, I've always been kind of, once the McMahon started fighting in the late 90s, that was like, you'd never really seen that before.
Right.
But like, bringing him back, and having him have a spot on WrestleMania every year, I mean, that's taking someone's spot. The Miz could have done something else with, initially what I heard back in the fall was Daniel Bryan was turning heel and he was turning face, and then they were going to fight for the title at Mania. I was like, well, that would be awesome. And then it happened, but then the match didn't happen. So,
right.
It was brought up to me at one point. I don't remember who said it, but the way they looked at it was, you have literally the biggest responsibility in the world wrestling Shane McMahon because you're wrestling the boss's son. So they must have a lot of trust in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very high on you, which I think is pretty cool, but also like that's got to be terrifying.
Yeah. Right, because especially he's in his 40s?
And Shane's batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Shane may be close to 50 now.
And I mean, you sit there and watch him, and he's about 10 minutes in, and he's like Brock Lesnar. He's just dripping sweat.
That's the thing. Yeah, he wears like the undershirt and the jersey thing and jeans, and it's like, bro, wear something else if you're gonna get that hot.
He goes 100 miles an hour the whole time, which I respect, but he's gassed like so. He looks gassed so quick, and it's just like, man, if I were you, I don't know if I'd be able to finish.
Right, and you sit there and watch the match, and then all of a sudden the Miz's dad jumped into the ring, and I'm like,
gave us the best meme of our lives.
I was like, where's this going?
Yeah,
like him putting his hands up like he's gonna punch him, like old school, and I'm like, where's this going? Like, it would have been. Well, I mean, you can't bring Maurice in because they announced they have another baby, but I mean, it was a good match, and then we all expected the Kofi match to happen the way it was. I was expecting a new title to happen in that box, not new T-shirts, but
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, all in all, it was good.
I'm glad they went back to the regular title and not the hemp title. I mean, it was cool that they did that for Daniel Bryan's message and everything, but like, I think it was ugly.
Yeah, so he had that, and then it was a cool moment that Kofi got to celebrate with his kids in the ring and all the other stuff. But I really think that like we said, that tonight we'll find out somebody in that New Day is going to turn on him, or something else is going to happen. And if I was to say something, it's probably Xavier, because he hasn't wrestled much and they haven't really done much with him, and he's just the funny guy. So they play that role as he's always been the funny guy, the shadow, unless you push Big E.
Yeah,
I'd love for a Big E push.
Yeah, I've been hearing about a Big E push since they came up from NXT.
I just remember being in Nashville the night he won the Intercontinental title.
Oh yeah,
at that WWE show here in Nashville, and that place, I don't even think he was a babyface at the time. I think he was still kind of in between, and that place exploded when he won the Intercontinental title.
And I would like to see a big push for him, but it's kind of like we talked, and we'll talk with Mark Henry about this next week when he's in the show. But it's this goes to show that WWE is changing. They put the belt around Dream, now they're putting it around Kofi, and I think back in the 90s, Ahmed Johnson literally opened up an interview, and he's like, Vince McMahon doesn't want to give us the title, make us the guy. So
progression, I saw on Twitter where some people were saying maybe it's a little too late. I don't think it is a little too late. I think, they're recognizing what people want because people are being more vocal. And it was just it was emotional seeing Kofi get the title. And then I saw all my friends that were even still in Jersey, independent wrestlers, fans, managers, whatever, just the outpour of support for Kofi getting that title. It overshadowed anything that anybody had to say. It was incredible. Just for the entire wrestling community, and just Kofi Kingston to have that moment as a human being, couldn't trade it for the world.
Right. And so we'll talk about this one last thing, and we'll wrap the show up. I think the highlight of the night, and we can all probably agree on this, is the Doctor of Thugonomics coming out. I was not expecting that, the Babe Ruth thing, and I was like, where are they going with this? And then, boom, the old scene of the music hits. He comes strolling out, and I was like, okay.
We left Jersey at 10 a.m. on Saturday. We got home about 2 in the morning, and pretty much the sole purpose of driving like that was so we could watch Mania. And I don't regret the drive at all. I don't regret leaving when we did. None of us had a booking or anything on Saturday, so we just were screw it, we'll drive back. We don't really have a place to stay. I woke up and I was legitimately excited for Mania. And this is coming from somebody who, before Family Reunion, was kind of jaded on wrestling. And then that whole collective WrestleMania week experience really brought me back. I loved Mania. When John Cena came out as a Doctor of Thugonomics, I literally jumped up and was just yo, what the fuck?
Right.
I just man, of all the curveballs you could throw, incredible.
And,
incredible.
And I thought that, maybe he's going to come out during the Angle thing, but that and Elias, the perfect moment right there.
Yeah, and everybody was hoping for Undertaker, and of course he came out last night on Raw. But that's right around the time I quit watching, was when he was the Doctor. So it was wild. I mean, I was not expecting that at all. So
it's kind of a risk too, because the wrestling fan base evolves so much, and you grab new fans probably every day. Some of them are never going to go back and watch, old stuff. So
right.
It's who's going to get it? But it's fucking John Cena.
Yeah, and they're all going to know, but the kids are going to be like, why is John Cena dressed like that?
Yep. Why is he rapping?
Yeah, just go back and watch the WWE Network. It'll cost you $10. But one last thing, and I want to wrap this up because I want to end this on the note that I really want to ask a question. So you had the pleasure of announcing a match.
Yep.
You jumped in the ring, and all of a sudden you just hear everyone erupt for you. Dude. Walk me through this entire moment for you.
So, complete transparency, I messaged. I didn't know the full deal for the Family Reunion show. I didn't know if there was going to be one ring announcer. I didn't know that there were going to be 3 of us. So I just messaged, and I was like, hey, would it be possible for me to do our match? I feel like we picked the 6 best guys to represent Southern Underground Pro. I felt like to get the full experience, it would have just made sense for me to do it. And I was told, there was interest in it, and I just left it at that. If it happened, it happened. If not, still happy to be there. Still happy to watch all my friends do something incredible. So then about a week later, I get a message, hey, do you still want to do this? Absolutely. So I get there, and I ask, do you want me to introduce everybody in the ring like we normally do, or do you want me to do it over music? And they said, over music. We got to make this as quick as possible. Perfect. And then the guy that runs, essentially created IndependentWrestling.tv, he said, get in there, say your name, mention S.U.P, just kind of promoted him for a second, and then do introductions. So, full transparency again, I was just a bundle of nerves. 14 hours from home. Very few people actually knew who I was, so I just kept hitting the bar. I was getting beer after beer, because that's the full S.U.P experience, is me kind of drunk and just screaming like I'm essentially in a hardcore band still. So I slide on the stage to the dude, and I was like, how do you feel about me dropping an F-bomb or two? And he was like, do it. So Stepstool Sarah, who does ring announcing for Black Label Pro, St. Louis Anarchy, and a few other places. Rich Palladino, who worked for ECW, he does stuff for Beyond, Chaotic, and a couple other places. We're going over the match assignments, and they were like, do you want another match? And I said, well, the only match that was discussed for me was Southern Underground Pro. I'm not trying to step on toes. If I get that one match, I'll be good. So we were semi-main match 8, I think, 7 or 8. And Sarah just looks at me, and she was like, hey, I'll introduce you. Then you come up, do your whole deal. I was like, cool. And I just looked at her, and I was like, I'm just going to do it. Like, balls to the wall, 1,000%. I don't know anything else. So, they're either going to laugh or they're going to get up, and they're going to appreciate it. And she was like, no, do it. So she introduces me, and I get on the apron, and I just hear Jesse chants, and I literally just said, this wasn't supposed to happen. This isn't supposed to happen. Like, being where we were at the Collective for, GCW, for Independent Wrestling TV, with my best friend of probably near 20 years, backyard wrestled together, trained together, it was very emotional. I probably cried that entire match, and I'm not a crier, but just seeing him and everybody else was something I never expected. Like, from 7th grade till now, Brett and I were always told, like, you'll never get there, you'll never do this, you'll never do that. And just being so hard-headed and, like, just stubborn punk kids, like, we found ways to get, like, to scratch the itch, but then being at Mania Week, and you can actually hear my voice crack because I was crying when I introduced Brett as the Bone Storm champion. It was the most surreal feeling I've ever felt. And then now we're, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, like 5 days removed, 4 or 5 days removed, and I'm still getting tweets about it. Like, man. It's insane. Like, there's a Twitter, Wrestling with Unicorns. They do GIFs and videos at live shows. I think they just got hired by Independent Wrestling TV. Today, like, before I left the house, I saw a tweet from them that I gave them goosebumps. And then I talked to Jeremy from Swerve Video, and he said he had goosebumps. And I was just blown away that I think there were about 300-ish people there. In that moment, they were all chanting for me, and I got lost and thought we were back at the Basement East.
Man.
Yeah.
Crazy
and just to
stuff.
see 6 of my really good friends come out, kill it. There were a few people that told us we had the best representation of our product on that entire show, and that was the goal, to give the closest thing we could to a full Southern Underground Pro experience in 8 minutes.
Man, crazy. And speaking of S.U.P, let's talk about something that's coming up.
Cool.
Tell me about it.
Hold Your Ground, Easter Sunday, 4/21, Basement East. It's insane, man. Like, we've got Brett Eisen defending the Bone Storm title against James Drake, who's been on a tear with WWN and Evolve. We've got O'Shea Edwards versus Anthony Henry. Again, Anthony Henry's been on a tear through Evolve and WWN. Brett and O'Shea, in their own rights, have been, doing incredible stuff. O'Shea has some sort of deal with Future of Honor, which is a branch of Ring of Honor. Brett's been just kicking down doors left and right for the past year, wrestling Nick Gage, B-Boy, and now he gets James Drake. Kevin Kuhn, a mystery opponent. It could literally be anyone. Cabana Man Dan versus a man that I feel is extremely underrated, and Matt Justice. He wrestled for WWE for a while, did house shows and stuff. He's an incredible talent. Wrestles predominantly at AIW in Cleveland, Ohio. Alley Cat versus Logan Easton LaRue. Logan actually wrestled in Nashville for Freedom Pro once or twice against Kevin Koo, and people call Alley Cat the heart and soul of S.U.P. So that'll be really fun. Zach Cooper versus Logan Stunt. Logan, of course, the brother of Marco Stunt, who's had, a roller coaster of a year between getting to show out on Joey Janela's Spring Break and All In. And now Zach Cooper, who this kid will literally go anywhere. He's from Florida. He comes up to Nashville. He was recently in Washington State. Like, he'll go anywhere. I'm leaving out some matches, and I feel really bad. I just can't think of them all off the top of my head. There's so much. This is our 2-year anniversary show. It's going to be huge.
Oh, man.
Yeah. When we first started, I remember talking to a buddy who worked for another wrestling company that was a little bit bigger, and he told me that indie wrestling would never work in Nashville. Like, super indie wrestling would never work in Nashville. So we might not be reinventing the wheel or breaking down any barriers, but with the help of Independent Wrestling TV and everybody that shows up to our shows, like, we never thought we'd make it this far, So if we can keep packing in about 200 people to the Basement East, we'll keep doing this as long as we can, as long as everybody comes out and has us and supports us. Like, it's for Nashville, man. Nashville came up to New Jersey and showed out for us. So I think that really just relit the fire in all of us to keep putting out the best stuff we can to keep everybody happy.
Yeah. Well, dude, that's all in a nutshell. Righteous Jesse on the show today, man.
I appreciate you having me, man.
Dude, thanks for coming by.
Anytime.
Man, talk about an awesome show. Our buddy Jesse, thanks for stopping by. Getting to talk to him about his career in wrestling, really cool. Even hearing about that death match that he had, crazy. Just thinking about the skewers, and it's giving me goosebumps and kind of making me queasy at the stomach right now thinking about it, and then seeing the actual photos that he showed us, man. Such an amazing week of shows. Let's see. This Friday, the Carnies are stopping by. Sideshow Wrestling has got a show going down Saturday. The Carnies are going to be in studio. They're going to talk about that. They are wrestling. Newly minted WWE Hall of Famer Billy Gunn, and then James Storm. And then next week, the world's strongest man, Mark Henry, is going to be in the studio. I've been sending out tweets trying to challenge him to an arm wrestling and pretty much just calling him out. And, well, he answered the tweet, and, well, now I've got to start working out because Mark Henry in studio on Monday. So the Carnies in studio Friday, and then Mark Henry Monday. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of episodes. So wherever you get your podcast, whether it's the free iHeartRadio app, iTunes, Spotify, wherever, make sure you click that subscribe button, give us a 5-star rating, give us a thumbs up, and let all your friends know. And, well, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It's Battle on Air. Until Friday, I'll talk to you guys later.